Our guest today is Dr. Felix Livingston, Professor of Economics and Director of the Honorable Entrepreneurship Program at Flagler College. Thank you for being with us today.
Appreciate the invitation to come and speak to your students, Dr. Yanni.
I appreciate it. So, Honorable Entrepreneurship, that sounds really interesting. Could you tell our listeners and viewers exactly what that is?
Well, a lot of politicians and news people have built careers on condemning entrepreneurs as being interested in nothing more than profit, and that wealth creation is a zero-sum game, and that a lot of our students hear nothing but the negative side of entrepreneurship and business. So the idea, I've created a minor at Flagler College to teach students about the positive side of entrepreneurship, which I refer to as honorable entrepreneurship. What we do is we teach students that there are fundamentally two ways to achieve your ends if you're a business person. One is using the economic means of production and trade, and the other is using the political means of compulsion and coercion. A lot of businessmen known today as crony capitalists unfortunately use the means of compulsion and coercion they obtain from their compliant politicians, preferential policies and privileges that enable them to gain for their firms at the expense of non-preferred competitors as well as customers. And so I teach students, or we teach students in the program, that the old-fashioned way of providing a good product at a good price, of being alert to opportunity, of being alert to changes in resource prices and so on, those are the economic means that really are the source of the wealth of nations. It's a more difficult way to achieve success than the political means, but it's the right way, and again, it's the source of the wealth of nations.
Could you maybe explain a little bit about why we should prefer productive opportunities as opposed to coercive ones in terms of, I would think if in business everybody talks about competition, that, well, lobbying is just a different form of competition. What's wrong with that?
What's wrong with that is, entrepreneurial success and human flourishing has always been linked to general rules of law and property. Going all the way back to Solon in 6th century BC, going forward to when Pericles gave the funeral oration in, I think, 451, the Athenian city-state was at its pinnacle. Because they adhered to the rule of law, general rules. Everyone was equal before the law, or at least the citizens were equal before the law. What happened after that was a democratic majority began making capricious decisions, and everyone had to obey the dictates of these majoritarian democracy, and so entrepreneurial flourishing, human flourishing generally was in decline. If you look at the Roman Republic, the same story occurred. If you look at the English experience, the same story occurs. So when the founders drafted the Constitution, they were very much aware that you couldn't trust powerful individuals to protect liberty, that we needed two things that they understood to be important: the rule of law and general rules of justice. And so when crony capitalists pursue their selfish interests using political means, they're undermining these general rules that have always been the secret to success, to human flourishing and entrepreneurial opportunity. And what they do is they cause, Friedrich Bastiat said there are two things that happen, two things that can possibly happen. Number one, people either lose their respect for the law or people lose their moral sense. And so not only are they creating, undermining the rule of law, but they're creating this social damage by and making people question government, which in many cases they should. But so there are a lot of social harm is created by crony capitalists.
So the idea then is that cronyism and crony capitalism not only, picks winners and losers arbitrarily, but if we take Bastiat at face value, that means it also erodes sort of our morality then as people in society.
Absolutely. Yes, that's correct. Mm-hmm.
So when we say honorable entrepreneurship, how are we connecting the act of being productive back to virtue and honor?
Well, if we go back to Aristotle, basically, Aristotle said that happiness is most likely to come when someone achieves excellence in some area. At the time, he didn't understand the extended social order, as Hayek has pointed out, even though the city-state of Athens was actually based upon the extended social order. And so his ideas about excellence were applied to games, they were applied to architectural drawings and so on. But actually the concept can be applied to entrepreneurs in the creation of new businesses in an extended social order. There are certain types of excellences that are required to be successful. One must, again, recognize opportunity. One must adapt, and so on and so forth. Some of the points I made earlier. But in effect, there are two types of goods with the practice of entrepreneurship. There are the internal goods of knowing the means by which that you should use to achieve success. And then there are the external goods, which is the honor, the wealth, and so on that accompanies the internal goods. And so honorable entrepreneurs practice both these internal goods and these external goods. Part of the internal goods, basically, is adhering to these rules that have evolved through generations that we know work. General rules of property and justice. Crony capitalists are barred from being honorable because they violate these rules. They perhaps achieve external goods of wealth and so on, but they violate these internal goods. Adam Smith said the paths to virtue and wealth can be the same. And for honorable entrepreneurs, the paths are the same. For crony capitalists, there is no path to virtue. Take the example of a chess player. To achieve excellence in chess, one must become well-versed in multitudes of openings. You have to understand all these variations of many, many openings. You have to know the strategies of the middle game, and you have to know the techniques of the end game when you have certain pieces at certain parts of the board. People who achieve that excellence then become excellent players and frequently win. Now, if winning is all that matters, then chess players and other game players may be apt to cheat if winning is the only thing. If profit is the only thing that you're seeking, then you're apt to violate these general rules of justice, which again undermines the extended social order.
Wow. So I guess our last question that I have is then, why is it that we actually have to define entrepreneurship as honorable? Because it seems like entrepreneurship in and of itself would require these wonderful virtues of discovery and aiding your fellow human being. What has led us to have to now describe it as being an honorable profession and separating it from crony capitalism? What's brought that about today?
That's a good question, Dr. Yanni. I think a lot of business schools ignore the right way of doing business. Before we launched this minor, I went through about a dozen business ethics texts, business and society texts. Not one of them talked about the appropriate relationship between business and government. And so it's almost as if implicitly anything goes. Anything you can do to achieve your end can be done. If that means working as a lobbyist with a compliant political authority, who of course gains the donation to be re-elected and so on. So it's a kind of a quid pro quo. But so I don't know why our education has gotten away from praising those people who don't engage in those types of duplicitous type activities.
Wonderful. We appreciate your time, and that's a lot of food for thought. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Stu. Thank you.